Welcome to Event Experience by Bizzabo, the podcast where we bring the best and brightest event experience leaders together to share stories, tips, and lessons learned from creating some of the world's biggest events. I'm Rachel Moore, your podcast host. From here on out, I'll be addressing y'all as fans. In this episode, we welcome David Grass, Senior Director of Client Strategy and Marketing for Wilson Dow, to dig into the findings of their Pop Culture Trends Report. There's a treasure trove of takeaways in our discussion, as well as a slew of terms and audience tendencies that will help you craft events that go beyond transactional and into the realm of transformative. I mean, who doesn't want that at their next event experience? Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Event Experience. I am so excited about today's guest because our podcast guest is rolling in with over 18 years of agency-side marketing and client strategy experience. So anyone out there who does agency-side work, I know your ears are perking up right now. These days and for the past 5 years, he has served as the Senior Director of Client Strategy and Marketing for Wilson Dow. I'm very pleased to welcome David Grass to the Event Experience podcast. David, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Rachel. It's a pleasure to be here, and we at Wilson Dow are very honored that you are having us on this morning. So thank you.
Oh my gosh, I feel very honored. We're all just swimming in honor right now, so I love it. It's going to be a great podcast. I don't know if this one's relevant just to about anyone who does events because we always have those long days. What are your go-to on-the-ground event day shoes when it's going to be a long day?
So, Rachel, it's as if you know me quite well. I am a sneakerhead, admittedly. And StockX is feeding me the latest Jordan 1s every day because they know that that's my favorite. And I am a huge, huge sneakerhead. So Jordan 1s, to specifically answer your question.
Yes.
Today I am wearing Adidas 1972 something or others that StockX also sold me. And I'm not doing a commercial for StockX, but I get their feed every day. And it's scary. And my wife thinks I'm nuts. But I am a huge sneakerhead, and I love Jordans. I think growing up in Chicago and being a diehard Bulls fan and Michael Jordan fan, it's always special putting on a pair of Jordan 1s.
Let me ask this. Is there anything that you're listening to, watching, or reading these days that you can't put down, and it does not have to do with events?
The bad answer is it does have to do with events because I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. I'm currently reading Play Bigger, which I love. 4 authors that came from the event world.
Ooh.
Really talked about sort of how you prepare, pitch, succeed, differentiate, and really challenge the status quo. For those of you that have not read Play Bigger, I'm about halfway through it. Love it. And it challenges you to think differently about your day-to-day, no matter what industry you're in, which I always love. So it's a bad answer maybe, but that's what I'm currently reading.
I want to say is I think it's been a minute since we've gotten a good book recommendation. So I am here for it. I love it. A couple more questions. Is there a particular social post or a piece of media or even a hot take about events that you found interesting?
So it's so funny. I was on LinkedIn this morning and there's a bunch of people that I follow religiously, but one individual in particular that I'm not going to name, he went off on some just tirade about signing up for an event app and getting flooded with what he called garbage. And I'm being PC here. And his point in the LinkedIn post was, I am never going to sign up for an event app again.
Whoa.
And it's hysterical. But more importantly, I think it really taps into much of what we talked about today, which is like, if you're going to use tech in very specific ways with your audiences, that invisible notion must be present. They must feel like it's deriving meaning. And the minute somebody like this author feels like he's getting sold X, Y, and Z nonstop, he's out.
Yep.
And that's the world we now live in. It's so easy to unsubscribe. It's so easy to create trolls. And you really have to be thoughtful about this scrolling always on lifestyle that we all live.
That's so interesting. We actually, on the most recent networking webinar we did for Bizzabo, one of the speakers, Will Curran, he said, he same thing. He's like, if you got that kind of messaging that can happen in your app, you've got to moderate it. You've got to create rules of the road there. And because people will absolutely go in there and start spamming. And then guess what? People they're going to bounce as evidenced by the person you saw. So yeah, it's for real. Well, I obviously gave the briefest of brief introductions to you. You know yourself best. I would love to toss it over to you. Can you tell us a little bit more about what your day is like in your role at Wilson Dow? What does that entail? What are you doing over there?
Absolutely. So we at Wilson Dow, we're a creative production agency, and we have clients across many different verticals, and we are responsible for the strategy, the creative, and then the production and execution of events of all sizes and shapes. And so on the client strategy side, I am collaborating very closely with our clients as well as our prospects on really arriving at a future forward and differentiated approach to their events and experiences, whether those events be in the room, on the screen, hybrid, year round sort of look, feel, tone of what a journey can be. We really challenge our clients respectfully to think differently
Mm.
and to arrive at innovation, not for the sake of innovation, but more so in attendee data. And how do we leverage what we know about our audiences and look at that relative to what the competition's doing, where the world's going in pop culture, and what we're going to talk about today?
Hmm.
And how do we arrive at a future forward experience that's rooted in what our people actually want? And,
Ooh.
and our people are the heartbeat of the event. And how do we continuously deliver meaning and value and exceed their expectations at every touch point? And so it's my job to summarize, to really understand where events are going and why,
Mm.
in being able to deliver to our clients and prospects journeys that inform our creative, our production, our execution of any event or experience.
Wow, I bet that our audience is very excited to hear from you then today, because isn't that what we're all trying to crack, like the future forward of events, and just knowing how to know what the audiences want so we can plan those and give it to them, and then everybody's happy at the end, including internal stakeholders and sponsors and all the business reasons we do events as well. But I'm also excited because you pretty much segued really nicely into what we're about to introduce, because you did mention data and how crucial, how fundamental that is to your job, and really the job of every event planner out there, anyone tied to events. So, in case anyone wasn't already aware, Bizzabo loves reports. We love them, and we're not the only ones. If
We do
anybody,
too, Rachel.
you do? This is so timely. So they really are like the receipts of the events industry. And today we have the immense privilege to peek at a very specific set of data that every event professional is going to want to get their hands on. David, can you please tell us a bit about Wilson Dow, what we're sharing today that y'all have derived from all that data seeking?
Absolutely. So to take a step back, we attend South by Southwest every year.
Mm.
And there was a light bulb moment. I was sitting in a seat at South by, and one of the big tech companies was doing a fireside chat, and they were talking about inspiration. The panelists they were talking about, where does inspiration come from when it comes to flagship tech events? And that's one of the many types of verticals that we play in as an agency. And the CMO's response to that was, we send 6 employees to Disneyland every year. And that's a very common approach in
Mm.
our industry, that a CMO will take a group of event planners and they'll go experience a concert at the Sphere. They'll go to Disney, right? They'll become a Swiftie for a night. And all of that's great. And we do the same thing on some level as well. And you start to derive sort of, what are those wow moments in pop culture that land really well? And how do we bring that back to our turf for our clients? And that is an observational way of thinking about pop culture and data.
Yeah.
And the light bulb moment at South by Southwest was really, that's all great, but what is the attendee? What is the human? What does the fan think of all of that?
Mm-hmm.
And how can we uncover it to really understand and validate what humans want and what success looks like to them when attending pop culture events, experiences, that landscape? And we felt like there wasn't a lot of recent data out there addressing the fan. And so what we set out to do was to say, let's look at fan data to support in fueling our clients and prospects' future in relation to what I brought up earlier, Rachel. We do a lot of prospect persona data studies where we are working with our clients to understand their audiences. And that's very common. And so how do we juxtapose that with taking a glimpse into pop culture and saying, instead of going to Disney and going to all these events, let's talk to the people that go to them and let's get really smart on what's working and what's not, and how do we apply that to our future.
I love that you call them fans too. Anyone who's listened to this podcast, either one episode or multiple, we talk about audience a lot and attendees, audience kind of interchangeably. And then real briefly, would you mind expounding a little bit? Like when I say audience versus fan, what do you see the differences being versus like, hey, I'm an attendee or an audience member versus a fan?
Yeah, I think fandom really ties into culture. I think it ties into community. And I think there's a deeper unspoken meaning that is more on the emotional side.
Yeah.
And I think when you're an attendee, there are the functional elements. You're there for the musician. You're there to hear the latest track. You're going to a show on Broadway because you've heard about that. There are many different ways fans engage with pop culture. I think for the true fan, though, it ties back to that emotional connection that they have, not only with the artist or the venue or what is in front of them, but the people around them. One of the things that Chelsea, my teammate, and I uncovered in this study is the importance of that year-round community and that year-round culture. And fandom is not about going to a show, experiencing it, and leaving it. It's that 365-degree journey of being a fan. So whether you're a fan of Caitlin Clark, whether you're a fan of the new Intuit Dome, right, in Inglewood, California, that Steve Ballmer from Microsoft built, there are fans that from all different areas, of course, across the country. The question then becomes, from a fandom standpoint, how are we building an emotional connection with these people year round?
Yeah.
And what is that unspoken thing, that red thread that they all latch onto? That, in our mind, is fandom. And that's what our clients on many levels are trying to achieve with their quote unquote audiences.
Absolutely. I mean, who listening or watching this video is or this podcast is not going to say, we want fans. We want that kind of committed where it's like, hey, it doesn't matter what topic you're putting out or who's there. I'm a fan of your brand. I'm a fan of what you're doing. I'm going to be there, or at least experience immense FOMO if I'm not there. But you're right. It feels like it takes it to at least another level up, if not multiple, from just I'm showing up, swapping my badge, and now I'm attending. I'm here versus, oh, I'm so here on multiple levels, right? Where it's like, I am committed and I'm in.
Right.
Everybody wants the fan. And I want to, so let's dive in a little bit to some of the aspects of the data that y'all found. I just mentioned it. First up, FOMO, fear of missing out, which has often prompted event planners to pack their events right up to every nanosecond with content and sessions because nobody should miss anything. David, what is the data? What does y'all's data tell us about FOMO and how that figures out?
Yes. So one of the really interesting insights that we uncovered in our pop culture data study was that a more selective attendee is emerging. And we like to categorize that in the framework of JOMO, joy of missing out. And how do we transition or shift from JOMO to FOMO? And that kind of gets back to that root of fandom that you're describing. And what we learned in the study is, from a consumer perspective, there are more events now than ever before. So choice, perhaps there's too much choice, in fact. Also, attendees view their time and their value of their time very differently than they did, call it pre-pandemic. And, a lot of attendees, one of the key questions is, how do you get them off their living room couch and to your venue or to your experience for our external audience clients, for example. For our internal audience clients in the biotech space where they're required to be at those events, it's a little bit different. But to achieve that FOMO, you have to start with that journey and the pre-promotion of where you want to take them. So I think both with external audiences and internal audiences, it gets back to that sort of self-selective audience that's emerging. And the implication is, of course, well, what do we do about that, right? And for that more selective audience, we need to create a curated journey for them that feels like it's always on, that feels like it's ever evolving, that feels like you're deriving value year round, whether it's a biotech internal sales kickoff for the year, whether it's, a product launch, whether it's a flagship tech event, or a world tour. We do many of those for our clients. It all gets back to sort of that feeling of that curated journey. That's what we heard loud and clear from our study, that sort of at the highest level, that's the new expectation.
Yeah. And we're hearing a lot about this lately too. I mean, obviously we have guests like yourself here on the podcast. We do webinars on panelists where we talk about this. We resonate with everything you're saying because people are looking for more. And it goes right back to what you said about trying to build a fan. Well, the way you're going to do that is if you feel like, hey, we're hand in hand with you every step of the way. We see you as more than just a transactional body or person who's showing up, another number in our registration count. That they're meaningful to you as the event designer, as the people putting on the event. Therefore, they're feeling that meaningfulness on their side. The JOMO is great. It's JOMO, joy of missing out, which
Joy of missing out, correct.
first time I've heard it ever. So I feel lucky, and hopefully, if anyone's watching, listening to this,
what we love about that is it's not to say they're not going to come to your event,
right,
or they're not going to be happy there. It's more to say expectations of attendees are on the rise.
Yeah.
And we really have to be strategic about engagement and about sharing that meaningful emotional connection to them in ways that we may not have in the past.
Yeah. Well, and it's not a negative connotation, like you said. I mean, fear of missing out is negative, or it's just like, oh my gosh, I'm all aflutter. I'm in my feels because I can't be there or can't get there. And we're going to touch on that in the next question I want to ask you about the report. But joy of missing out, it really does feel like, no, there's a commiseration, there's a camaraderie here. We're enjoying this journey together, even when there are like those missed touch points, but we'll see you on the other side of that. There's more to come. And
absolutely
really like the whole vibe of that. And you pointed out too, and this is going to lay up the next question I want to dig into with you about the data y'all found. Obviously, you said people are being way more selective. I think everyone can probably relate, maybe more now than ever before, on something about the bite of the budget, where obviously anytime you're looking to, hey, I may or may not go be a fan and go this particular experience, guess what? If there's a dollar amount attached to that, that's got to be high on the consideration. So how much fans and attendees are willing to spend? What does the data from your report say about the buying decision before an attendee does, or a fan clicks? I'm going to use fan from now on, before they click purchase.
One of the key insights that Chelsea and I uncovered was that cost is the singular barrier, if you will, when it comes to pop culture, followed closely by time convenience, the number of sheer events. You have StubHub fees, which is a whole nother subject for another podcast, Rachel. But on a serious note, cost is a barrier in the pop culture world. And that's a real thing that we're seeing. And we heard loud and clear in this study. I think from a event sort of biotech, bringing it back to the industry, so to speak, we're taking what we learned from those insights and really rethinking the value proposition to the attendee.
Yeah.
And I want to touch on that because I think that for so long, when it came to promotion, when it came to comms plans for events and experiences, typically it's about the early bird pricing. It's about the save the date. It's about sharing a keynote speaker in the wow moment. Those are all table stakes and still part of the equation.
Yeah.
I think getting back to that idea that we uncovered with that curated journey feel, how do we make the value proposition feel like this experience was truly built for me? And so that's a different lens, as an implication to the insight, to say when we're strategically working with our clients, there are simple things, right? Rethinking registration. How do we get to know the whole person, not just their persona at work? What does Rachel Moore do in her personal life? What are her passions and interests, right? How can we bring some of that to the event? So that's a small part of it.
Yeah.
The bigger part of it is going back to this whole discussion today around data. How can we ask the right questions to derive data that's going to create that curated journey for them, or at least begin to create that? We have some clients that are very new to this process. And so, that's one way in. I think another really important point is, people often think about value proposition in terms of how do I sell that ticket? How do I get that attendee there? And that's all part of this equation, like we've talked about. But just as important is once they arrive and once they begin to experience, the adaptability. And how do we leverage tools like AI and so many new functions that we have within the space of tech to say, based on what Rachel experienced on day one of this event, we're going to now prescribe what we think she may be most interested on days 2 and 3.
Ooh.
Or based on what she experienced in hour one, now all of a sudden, and so now all of a sudden we're putting clients in the mindset where maybe it's not a prescriptive 2 or 3 day agenda. In fact, one of the things Chelsea and I learned was that, especially for older generations, they like structure.
Yeah.
And they want that framework. So we have to be very cautious. But for the younger generation, for Gen Z, they're very comfortable with like wellness breaks and not a stacked back to back to back schedule. And so those are all the things we're balancing out and looking at from a data perspective to say, this journey isn't one size fits all. And it's got to be tied to both the emotional and functional side of the human. And how do we leave less to chance for people moving forward? And I think, just to summarize this rethinking the value proposition, I think for your listeners, the best way to think about this is, in the old days, the creative brief was, how do you want to make people sort of think, feel, do, act?
Yeah.
And now in our mind, coming out of this data study, all that's still true, but how do we plan to make people feel like this experience changed them?
Ooh.
And I think that that's a really big part of what we uncovered, and sort of putting them in that protagonist role.
Yeah.
And making them feel like the protagonist. And when you do that, now all of a sudden, at each touch point, from content to networking, which is a huge part of any event, to exploration and demos and all of the things that are happening, evening events, how did this experience change me? And I think that that's a critical part to the way we view strategy and data moving forward.
That's a mic drop right there, because I mean, you just made me kind of think too. It's like, it's almost like when you might have a book that you read that maybe you did only read it once or even twice, but it's something with that sticks with you, and it does change you as a person. It changes the way you feel or think about things or the world. And that events can do that. I so appreciate you bringing that up too, because it really does raise the bar. And I think too, really takes, like, I feel like sometimes we can, and we talk about this a lot as well in a lot of our content, it can become very rote, where it's like, I'm doing this event, churning it out, I just need to get butts in seats. I need to, get the salespeople, the leads and stuff like that. And so you're very focused on that. And of course we all should be, but don't minimize, I guess, the impact that your event can have on a singular person. To, like you said, you can transform somebody by virtue of them having experienced your event. And that's
100%.
huge. Oh,
and I think that feeling, and that's what we tell our, biotech clients in the internal space, where they have a sales force or a sales kickoff, 500 people in the room that have to be there. No, you're not selling a ticket. No, there's no cost. That barrier is not there. But to your point on what you just said, how are you going to make these people feel like this really did change them? And what are the touch points to do so?
Wow. Oh, well, everybody, events are in a new age, and we need to be, I love this whole thought too, because it really does mean so much to the people listening to this too. You have a lot of responsibility, and, with great power comes great responsibility. And the fact that the things you design, even just a webinar, can be transformative. We'll be right back with more event experience after the break. Behind every great event organizer is software that makes managing the small stuff easy, so you can focus on crafting events that matter. From seamless registration and on-site solutions like the Bizzabox to powerful dashboards and the Click Smart Badge, Bizzabo's Event Experience Operating System is your all-in-one solution to planning conferences that captivate and experiences that elevate. Visit Bizzabo.com. That's Bizzabo.com to learn more. We're back with David Grass from Wilson Dow to delve into tech's role, starring or supporting in events today. You brought up something too, talking about being able to craft, use technology like AI and things to craft or even pivot someone's journey throughout an event, where it does feel very custom based on like how they're treating each minute, each hour. Our favorite topic, or one of them obviously, is event tech. We're having an inception moment right now as we talk about, through tech about an event tech podcast about event tech. Let me ask you this, because we have had some folks, will often have guests who really dig into a specific event. And I always ask people like, hey, was there a specific activation or an aspect of this event that you'd like to call out? We have heard a lot of people say, yes, there was this technology that we used, that really stood out. Should event planners be putting those new technologies like where they're front and center in the spotlight and the main thing to look at? Or is it better that they're in the background? I don't notice it. I don't see it. I just feel its presence and know it's working. Like, kind of, what is the data saying about either or being best?
Absolutely. And, in the world of pop culture right now, it's a great question because, of course, ChatGPT, AR, VR, it's everywhere you go. And so our big question was exactly what you've posed. And what we found in the pop culture data study was that actually the more invisible, so to speak, the technology is, the more impactful it is on our people.
Yeah.
And more specifically, I think what's really important to note is that oftentimes when we go to conferences, we were just at Event Marketer Summit, we talked about South by Southwest. When you go to these events and everyone's talking about ChatGPT, the first question is like, how am I using this tool to create the buzz and the wow and all of this great stuff? And for us, it starts, of course, with the data, ironically, which is what we're talking about today. And it's like, what are we trying to achieve because of what we know these people? And then is there an interesting way that the tech supports that? So a very simple example was we were at a recent event, and at the end of every session, they had a QR code come up, and you could download by way of the QR code in real time an event session summary across. And this was in every room you went to. So very simple execution with AI, where in real time during the Q&A of a breakout session, you're already getting that report. And why that's so critical for our clients is because oftentimes some of their teammates are in the room and others aren't.
Yeah.
And so how do you inform and educate your downlines that weren't in that room what just happened? And now all of a sudden they're texting and emailing on their iPhone exactly what the spit out was of that particular session. And I think really soon, Rachel, which is exciting, we're gonna get to this place where, like, just taking that one example, there may be 6 personas sitting in the same session, and they, by way of AI, may get different session summaries from the same speaker. And so I think that's where we're going. But to take a step back, is it about the technology and the AI, or is it about the human getting what he or she needs in real time to best support them, their journey, their business, their teammates? And for us, it's the latter.
Yeah.
And so, that's one example. I think another great example of what we uncovered in the study is, one-to-many environments like keynote rooms, are now being broken down because you can get the one-to-many experience at home.
Yeah.
And so what we uncovered in the study is really sort of from a mini community standpoint, we saw the impact that social environments have. And so taking a step back, people ask us all the time, is content still king? Content is king, but along with conversation. And how are we leveraging content to drive that conversation and create that sort of social content factory, if you will?
Yeah.
And technology plays a huge role in that. So it's a long way of getting to the idea that, the tools help. The AI is a game changer, no question about that. I don't think anyone would fight us on it, Rachel. But I think that the bigger question we always say is, are you creating frictionless environments where the tech, again, based on this insight that we uncovered, it's about the invisible impact it's having on our people. And I think, one great recent example of that is the Intuit Dome in LA.
Yeah.
And I know I briefly mentioned that earlier, but didn't talk specifically about it. But for your listeners, Steve Ballmer said, I want to create the first stadium that's completely cashless, where you will never wait at a restroom ever again, where you will never wait to get food or snacks or beer or like whatever you're there for. And so he took away every pain point and used technology. And for those of you that have been in the stadium, you know exactly what we're talking about. But the reason why he did it wasn't for his technology to fuel the journey. It was so that the fan was continuously in his or her seat, enjoying with the people that they were with what they came to see and experience.
Yeah.
And so it's it's a microcosm of what we're seeing from an event, event in journey standpoint,
Yeah.
in terms of where the world is going, where tech plays a huge invisible supportive role,
Yeah.
oftentimes
Yeah.
within the context of the fan journey.
I gotta say, and y'all know I identify as a woman, and I just know that just that pain point right there. Usually, we're the ones waiting in the line the longest at those kind of venues. So, yay! That anytime you can remove that and make it frictionless, like you said. But I even think too, like I'm someone who, in this, we're about to talk about generational stuff in a second, so prepare yourself. But I'm someone who's always loved to like live. I don't even, this isn't even a term anymore, live tweet or live post about, hey, I'm in this talk and I just heard an awesome soundbite. Even you sharing about like getting that AI synopsis afterward is huge because yes, the tech delivered that to me and I'd be like, that's pretty cool. But then I'm like, but I'm even cooler because I'm the one sharing out this awesome thing about where I just was and everybody should know what I just learned. And so you're
Yeah.
so right that it really does that kind of tech where it's like it lets me still shine as the fan. It makes that easier for me and helps my whole experience. Yes, super cool that it's there, but that's really interesting about the role it can play and kind of like what level of spotlight's on it. So David, I teased out a little bit. We're going to talk about generational stuff. I am a Gen Xer. I will ask you if you wish to identify yourself, what generation you are. You do not have to answer if you don't want.
So, Rachel, I learned a new term this morning from my teammate Chelsea, which is cusper. So I am on the cusp, who knew, of where you are and being a millennial. I'm right on that border.
All
So,
right. I'd
so
never heard.
today I'm going to side with you and be on the Gen X side.
Let's do it. And again, I learned two new terms today, which as a Gen Xer, yes, I always learn new things because it's always about the lingo. I got to know what the terms are. All right. So the reason I wanted to bring that up, and we've got two Gen Xers, though, you could claim millennial. And then obviously you mentioned Gen Z already and things like that. We've got boomers, or, the greatest generation, all these ones. And then I think my kids are Gen Alpha, which is, I don't need to tell them that they're Alpha anything. But so I'm asking about generations because one of the toughest tightropes event planners walk is how to cater to all the generations. You alluded to it earlier. It's Gen Z is going to have a way different way they like to flow through an event than, say, someone who's a Gen Xer like myself or yourself, especially if you're designing your event for a broader audience where all of those multiple generations could be there. Can we help our audience out a bit here with the report's findings on how do we navigate the multi-generational stuff?
Yeah, and for us, going back to that notion of the curated journey, because I think that is the new beginning point to planning from a data standpoint, what we know about these people, and tapping into generation. Let's take the Chicago Cubs for example. Local to Chicago, diehard fan over here. And I bring up the Cubs because from a pop culture standpoint, many of our clients in tech and biotech come to us and say, I have 8,000 people coming to my event. I have 20,000 people. How do I create that journey? How do I create that curated feel? How do I tap into what you said, understanding generational nuances and leaning into those? And so when you take the Chicago Cubs, right, they have 81 home games a year, let's say, and they have 38,000, 40,000 fans attending every one of them.
Yeah.
And so that's one great example of a property in pop culture that said, we used to target to those 38,000 people. And that's actually, with data now, the wrong way to go about this. What we now have done is segmented out our audience from a generational standpoint to say, we have people that come to games on Friday afternoon, and that's our networking crew, right? They're taking that Friday summer afternoon off to socialize with potential clients. New persona.
Yeah.
They know they have a client, a persona database, so to speak, of really passionate fans that are there to see rivalry games. So that became a persona. Those that only care about like the big games of the year. Then they had, another group, weekends and family, right? Sundays. And how do we tap into families in a really interesting way so that mom and dad feel included with the kids when attending that type of experience? And I think that's a great example of a brand, so to speak, that used to take a one size fits all approach to the different generations. And now they're taking a step back to say, yeah, we have 40,000 people in the stadium, but they're all there for very different reasons in promoting in very different ways to them to get them in the stadium. And whether it's kids run the bases after a game, tactically speaking, to appeal to a family on a Sunday versus a beer special on a Friday afternoon to be in the bleachers in network, very different ways in to reach very different people based on age, demographic, level of fandom, and what the Chicago Cubs know about those people. And so, circling back to this idea of data, I think we really have to take a step back. One of the things we see in the industry, Rachel, that ties directly into your question is oftentimes event planners do a post-event survey, of course, and they learn a little bit, and it's usually quantitative in nature.
Yeah.
And it becomes sort of the guide to planning the next year. And the challenge with that is that when you do that, you get it's relative to what the attendee just experienced, and you end up getting a slightly better version typically year over year.
Yeah.
And so starting where we did today with like my role being to drive innovation and differentiation and to deliver that future forward approach, we typically create a manifesto for a client, which is really, let's take your audience in instead of after the event, 8 months before the event, let's do a data study with them to say, what is their view of event success when it comes to content, networking, exploration? What do they want from us moving forward?
Yeah.
What do they want for a journey? And then planning against that. And that's a much more proactive way from a data standpoint to plan versus reacting to what you gave them and saying, okay, that speaker was a 4.6 out of 5, or that demo was a 3.5 out of 5.
Yeah.
We shouldn't, you make small considerations year over year, but it doesn't really drive the innovation that many of our clients initially come to us for.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. I mean, I think we're all, like you just said, we're all very used to the post-event survey, but there's nothing stopping you from asking ahead of time, what do you want to get out of this? And especially if you did go last year, great. Think about that. What are you expecting now? And all of this really does circle back nicely to what you said at the very beginning, future forward. The last thing you want to do is get in that rut and just be like, oh, just same old, same every day. You can't do that anymore. Technology is different. Like you said, pop culture is always evolving. The venues are also always evolving. All of these and the sentiment and everything, and new generations figuring in. We have really skated around all of these things, and all of this data, which we've gotten some sneak peeks from you during this discussion, is going to be in the report too. So just, this is so helpful for our audience, our fans. I'm going to call them fans from now on, because thank you so much. I'm embracing all this awesome and very relevant terminology today. Where can our listeners find and follow you online? And also, where can they find the report that we've been referencing today?
For those listening today, they can download our full pop culture data study at wilsondow.com. And we really encourage you to take a read through, share your thoughts and input with us. And we love to have discussions with everybody about where the world's going and why. So don't be a stranger. Take a read through, reach out to us, let us know what you think.
Awesome. And then where do we find and follow you online?
So I, on LinkedIn, David Grass, I work at Wilson Dow. You can just put that into the search box. I will come up. My teammate who's with me today, Chelsea, does such an outstanding job of marketing and PR and sharing the latest and greatest of what we're up to. So definitely follow us at Wilson Dow, and a great way to stay on top of where we believe events and experiences are going throughout the calendar year.
David's skill up advice requires us to put a little more thoughtfulness into our event planning.
I think the one thing to take away is, how do I bring greater intention to human engagement in changing times? And what that means to us really is, how do we become this change agent? At Wilson Dow, we talk about the power of life, and how do we create meaning, value, and unique experience design, and really move audiences through a year-round journey, using our events as like these critical touch points. But I think the one thing is, how do we bring greater intention to our people and really challenge ourselves to take a step back and say, sort of, why are they here, but why are they really here? And begin to uncover what that emotional connection is. And it's so easy to get lost in so much of what we talked about in terms of technology today and staying on top. We have a whole digital team at Wilson Dow for a reason.
Yeah.
They know the latest advancements in ChatGPT that Chelsea and I may not. But I think for us as an agency, and for us as sort of this community that plans events, it's really about, how do we bring greater intention? And that's the number one thing that we try to do. It is just that.
Thanks again to David Grass for joining us on Event Experience. And thank you for listening. If you're enjoying the show, we'd love to hear it. Connect with us on social and subscribe, rate, and review us wherever you're listening. Also, don't forget to share the show with your colleagues and friends. You can find transcripts of each episode and key takeaways on bizzabo.com/podcast. On behalf of the team, thank you. We'll gather again soon for a new episode of Event Experience.